Current News Podcast.
With Elu and Jesse.
Yes.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. You know how we see National Daughters Day stuff everywhere lately?
Oh, yeah.
So we thought we'd really get into it.
Definitely.
Not just the surface level stuff.
Right.
We're looking at this New York Times piece by Shelley Caldwell.
Yeah.
And it's asking, is this really just another Hallmark holiday, or is there more to it?
Right. Because I think at first glance, people might just think, oh, it's just a day. But there's some interesting stuff.
Totally.
Which is nice. But,
It's sweet.
It's sweet, but is that all there is to it? And this New York Times article, I think they called it a societal mirror, which I thought was interesting.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Okay, so societal mirror.
Yeah, so one of the first things is it actually takes us beyond just the U.S.
Oh, okay.
Did you know India has its own tradition of Daughter's Day?
Really?
Which I didn't realize until I read this. But it made me think, because in India, there's obviously a strong cultural preference for sons in a lot of places.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So celebrating daughters, there's a whole different thing.
Wow.
It's tied into female empowerment in a big way.
That puts it into perspective.
Yeah.
Here we are, oh, cute pictures. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Totally different context.
Okay, so back to the U.S. then, and this whole, societal mirror idea.
Yeah.
So they're saying Daughter's Day exists because of how much women's roles have changed.
Yeah, and it's it wouldn't even be a thing if we were still stuck in, the old ways of thinking,
Oh, totally. Those really limited expectations of what daughters should be.
Right. Back in the day, it was basically preparing daughters for domestic roles.
Right, caregivers, wives, mothers.
To fitting into this very narrow definition of womanhood.
Which is crazy to think about now.
I know. It's can you imagine?
Honestly.
It makes you appreciate how far things have come, though,
Oh, yeah, for real. And that's what's interesting, right? We've gone from that to now celebrating daughters who are pursuing education, becoming leaders, all of it.
Breaking free of those old molds.
Exactly. And the article quotes this psychologist, Dr. Peggy Drexler.
Oh, yeah.
And she says, we've moved from seeing daughters primarily as caregivers or future wives to recognizing their potential as leaders, innovators, and change makers.
It's so true.
It is. And I like that part about recognizing their potential. Not just what they are to us or whatever, but what they could be.
Right.
Okay, so we're celebrating this progress, but at the same time, the article talks about how this celebration might also be kind of a reaction to the struggles daughters still face.
Yeah, that's the other side of it, right?
Because we all know, true equality still isn't there yet.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
And the article makes that point, too. Is we're celebrating how far we've come, but acknowledging we're not done yet.
Right, the pay gap is still a thing.
Exactly.
Women are still underrepresented in leadership positions.
And it's not just a U.S. thing,
Right?
right? What about daughters in other parts of the world?
Yeah, the article makes a really important point about that. While we're here celebrating how much things have changed, there are so many places where girls still face, really serious obstacles.
It's
obstacles that we can't even imagine.
Yeah, it's a whole different reality.
Right, and it makes you realize that this whole idea of Daughter's Day, it hits differently depending on where you are in the world.
It does. So true. And the article actually mentions some organizations like Plan International, the Malala Fund, that are using Daughter's Day to really advocate for girls' rights.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, let's use this day to actually make a difference.
Absolutely. I love that they're doing that. Speaking of impact and all that.
The article also gets into the psychology behind these kinds of celebrations.
Oh, yeah, I was wondering about that. Does having a special day actually change anything?
I know, right? Shouldn't we just be showing appreciation all year round?
Exactly. But they talk about how family therapists actually see value in these, designated moments of appreciation. Interesting.
It's not about replacing everyday affection, but more a structured opportunity to be really intentional about it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's a reminder to slow down and actually express those feelings.
Because life gets so hectic,
Totally. And the article quotes this psychologist, Dr. Laura Markham.
Okay.
She says that these public displays of appreciation, even if it's something small, like a social media post,
right,
it can actually help combat those feelings of inadequacy that girls often face.
Wow, that is such a good point.
Isn't it?
It's by celebrating them openly, we're kind of pushing back against all the negative messages they get from society.
Exactly.
It's powerful.
You know what's funny? Whenever I see those Celebrity Daughters Day posts, I kind of can't help but look.
Oh, totally.
Like, even if it's someone like Beyonce, posting about Blue Ivy.
Right.
It's like you still see that little bit of, oh, they're dealing with the same parent stuff we are.
Totally. It's like this weird relatability.
Yes. And the article mentions that too.
Does it?
Yeah, like how these glimpses into famous families can actually be kind of comforting for regular people.
It makes you feel less alone, right?
Exactly. Like at the end of the day, parenting is parenting no matter who you are.
So true. And it's like, even with all the differences, those core experiences are universal. Exactly. So to wrap up here, the article ends on this really interesting question.
Okay.
And I'm going to paraphrase a bit, but it's basically asking, what is it about daughters specifically that seems to make people so hopeful about the future?
Oh, wow. That is a good question. And kind of hard to answer.
Right.
It's like, what is it about them that captures that sense of hope?
Yeah, and they don't really answer in the article, which I thought was interesting.
Like they leave you hanging.
Right. Like, what do you think? What is it about daughters?
Well, I don't know if I have a complete answer, but it made me think about all the strengths that I think girls and women tend to bring to the table.
Yeah, like what?
Like empathy for one, and collaboration. A willingness to like challenge the way things are. Those are all things the world needs more of, right?
Big time. And maybe by celebrating daughters, it's like we're recognizing how important those qualities are.
Exactly. It's like this hopeful message for the future.
I love that. Okay, so we started this deep dive thinking it was going to be about like Hallmark holidays and Instagram posts.
Right.
But we ended up somewhere totally different.
I think we always do, though.
That's true. It's like there's always more to uncover.
Always.
Well, on that note, we'll leave everyone with that question about daughters and hope for the future.
It's a good one to think about.
It is. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive, and we'll see you next time.
Turn the dial to the Daily News. Turn the dial to the Daily News. Turn the dial to the Daily News. Bringing voices, headlines, and shoes. We turn the dial to the Daily News.